because you're by my side. You comfort me and show me that I can make it through the night. Your love for me means everything to me. That's why I live, that's why I sing, that's why I can be me. You lift me up when I'm down, you come through for me. Wanna tell everybody that you're all that I ever need. I've got to testify, you've been good to me. You never left my side, always been there for me. You are the source of my life, and with all I do, I owe my everything to you. Never go through one day without your love to guide me, without you here beside me. You are the source of my life, all I do, and with all I do, I owe my everything. I owe you everything. Can never go through one day without your love to guide me, without you here beside me. Some friends may come and friends may go. You always let me know that I'm never all alone. Through the storm, through the rain, through my darkest days, said I trust in you, lean on you. You ease my troubled mind. If I could tell you what you mean to me and what you've done for me, said you are the air I breathe. I've gotta testify, you've been good to me. You never left my side, always been there for me. You are the source of my life. All I do, I owe my everything. I owe everything. Never go through one day without your love to guide me, without you here beside me. You are the source of my life, source of my life. I owe my everything to you. I could never go through one day without your love to guide me, without you here beside me. I thank you, Lord, for thinking of me, to see my road and to change my life story. Even though I can't see what you have for me, just give me the courage to do all that you need. Follow me and to lead me, Lord. Strength to carry on. I owe you my all. Oh, yes, I do. Oh, you are the source of my life. I owe my everything. I can never go through one day without your love to guide me, without you here beside me. You are the source of my life. All I do, I owe my everything to you. Oh, yeah. Never go through one day without your love to guide me.
Good morning. I'm going to play that one more time before we get started.
You are the source of my life. I am who I am today because you're by my side. You comfort me and show me that I can make it through the night. Your love for me means everything to me. That's why I live, that's why I sing, that's why I can be me. You lift me up when I'm down, you come through for me. Wanna tell everybody that you're all that I ever need. I've got to testify, you've been good to me. You never left my side, always been there for me. You are the source of my life, and with all I do, I owe my everything to you. Can never go through one day you everything. Can never go through one day without your love to guide me, without you here beside me. Some friends may come and friends may go. You always let me know that I'm never all alone. Through the storm, through the rain, through my darkest days, said I trust in you and lean on you. You ease my troubled mind. If I could tell you what you mean to me and what you've done for me, say you are the air I breathe. I've gotta testify, you've been good to me. You've never left my side, always been there for me. You are the source of my life.
Good morning, everyone. We'll be getting started here shortly.
Everything ever go through one day. Without your love to guide me, without you here beside me. You are the source of my life. Source of my life. My own, my everything to you. I could never go through one day without your love to guide me, without you here beside me.
Listen to these words.
Oh, thinking of me to see my world and to change my life story. Even though I can't see, but you have for me. Just give me the courage to do all that you need. Follow me and to lead me on. Strength to carry on. I owe you my all. Oh, yes, I do. You are the source of my life. My own, my everything. I can never go through one day. Without you here beside me. You are the source of my life. All I do, my own, my everything. Oh, yeah. Can never go through one day.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's edition of Saturday School. I pray things are well with you as you rise into this new day, this next day called Today. I'm excited for another day to be amongst the land of the living, to be seen and not viewed. Think about that. A lot of people are being viewed on this day for people are always coming and people are always going. That was Antoine Stanley from the album I Can Do Anything. The title of that particular song is You Are the Source. It's one of my conscious songs that I wanted to share with you this morning as we begin to delve into this conversation of being your higher self. So that's an appropriate song. You are the source. I want to say hello to those of you who are joining this morning on YouTube. I do have the YouTube up on the other side. So if you have a comment, you can feel free to post it. And I believe I'll be able to keep up with it. Now, every Saturday, I'm out here at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. I record the live and then I go in and I edit it. I place it in my YouTube, on the YouTube channel, Oasis Spiritual Center. So if you are not aware, you can go to the YouTube Oasis Spiritual Center channel and make sure you subscribe so you'll be informed when there's a new video up and running. Additionally, on this morning, I want to start this morning with an affirmative prayer. I'm going to copy the affirmative prayer and I'm going to place it in the feed so you can have it. And if you want to, you can copy it and put it into a document you can save. So I've put it inside of the Zoom room this morning. It's there. And then I'm going to put it on the YouTube channel So those of you who are with me this morning, here is the affirmative prayer that I want to start off with this morning. So there it is. It's there. So let's get started. It is Saturday school, Saturday morning. For those of you who want to participate in Saturday school, I want to encourage you to not let things get in the way. If you plan or intend to be here on Saturday school, set your alarms accordingly. Put your phone on silence. Any call or conversation that's coming in, unless you're expecting a call, can wait, because what I'm finding in talking to some of the individuals throughout the week is that the Saturday school is being hijacked. What I mean by hijacked is phone calls are coming in, people are multitasking, and that's one of the challenges of being on this platform, because while individuals are on this platform, they usually have other things running in the background, like Facebook or other social media sites, and it takes away from the classroom experience. So I pray that you will be responsible enough to make sure you set up the proper environment. And we're going to talk about environments today, that you can get all that you intend to get from showing up here at Saturday school. So let's get started. I'm going to start with this affirmative prayer. The reason why I'm starting with this affirmative prayer, because this is a prayer that I often pray when I affirm, when I'm dealing with something in my physical body. It's something that I share with individuals when they inform me that they're dealing with something. So I want to go through this prayer this morning. And the reason why I'm doing it is I am being hijacked to stay inside of this conversation that I don't want to be in. I work for the VA, so I'm always getting information across my desk that draws my attention into the COVID rates and what's going on with COVID. Even though I have signed and filed the exemption and don't have to take the shot, but I'm required every week to go in and get the nasal swab, which I really don't enjoy doing, but I refuse to take the shot. Primarily, here's why I am not taking it: because I stand on the word, I stand inside of the word, and I believe that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and that I don't deal with situations the same way the world deals with situations. And as a spiritual leader, I want to exemplify. So even on this morning, yesterday evening, I wasn't feeling, my body was telling me that something was different. And so I did go to work, and I persevered through that last night. When I got home, I just went into meditation, because I was not going to allow that thing to grow, which goes with the conversation this morning. So I woke up feeling a little better. So I'm going to stay inside of my affirmations. Now, why am I saying this to you? Because the more you watch the news, the more you read the newspaper, these things are pulling you into conversations, pulling you into thoughts. And some of these thoughts can cause you to be wavering. And I want you to begin to guard your thoughts. I want you to begin to guard the garden of your mind. So let's get started this morning with this affirming prayer. So if you are on YouTube, there is the affirming prayer there. If you're on Zoom, there's the affirming prayer in the chat. So here's the prayer I pray for myself. Here's what I affirm. And it goes like this: there's one perfect intelligence that is on purpose and creates everything out of itself. So see how I'm forming this? Because it is all there is. It is in me, with me, and around me, working through me right now. I know that my thoughts create my reality. Therefore, I carefully monitor and choose what I am thinking and speaking. I think and allow only positive thoughts to pass through my consciousness into my subconscious. I'm guarding the gates of my mind. I choose to dwell on positive thoughts. See, I choose to, okay? I don't allow my thoughts to be hijacked, telecasted. So I choose to dwell on positive thoughts and focus my intentions deliberately on the highest and best ideas for my life and humanity. I now realize and actualize the truth of my greatest good. I am thankful and grateful for the creative power of the law, for the principles that are at work in my life, And for this knowledge that has been revealed to me, I release this affirmative prayer to the law, knowing that as I speak my word and hold this space for the world community, it is already happening for our greater good and the good of all concerned, and so it is. So that's something you can copy and you can make it personal for yourself when you're going through something, when you're feeling, when your body is a barometer. It lets you know where something is wrong. It lets you know when you are not getting enough rest. It lets you know when you are eating the wrong foods. It also lets you know when you are cultivating or thinking the wrong thoughts. And that's what we want to start with this morning. So I hope that helped many of you this morning. Well, good morning, everyone. How are you doing? Do me a favor. If you've ever planted anything, type in there what you've planted. If you planted a garden, if you planted a flower, go ahead, type it in on whatever platform you're on. Type in what you've planted. I want to see if we have any individual out there that have planted anything, and perhaps you will be part of my conversation this morning. You can help, you can co-facilitate this presentation. Go ahead, type in. I don't see you doing it. This is participatory. So go ahead and type in what you've grown or what you planted before. Now, whether you know it or not, all of us have planted something. So I'm looking here and I'm not seeing any responses. Flowers in the garden. Thank you, Teresa. Do you have a particular flower that you enjoy planting? Oh, I do remember coming by your place outside your home. You have flowers, beautiful flowers. So I do know you are one who plant. I see Cheryl. She has flowers on her porch. She has flowers in her home. And she's even blessed me with a plant that she gave it to me on loan, I believe, but I think it's thriving here in my dwelling so wonderfully. So I don't think it's going to go back. It's going to remain here. And I have a plant from my mom that's when I picked it up, it probably came to my knee and now it's right at my chest. So this, I guess my environment is a great place for things to grow. Oh, you know the poem, Mary, Mary, Contrary, how does your garden grow? You remember that poem? I don't remember it by heart, but I remember it that it has to do with growing things. So I'm looking here. In third grade, I planted a bean sprout. Okay, it's been that long since you planted something? Cheryl planted a Chinese maple tree. I believe I may have that here. So I see some of you are participating and I appreciate it. Look over here in the chat. Let me see here. What is happening in the chat? I planted a garden when I was in my home, plants in my home. Now, I was introduced to gardening early in life, probably around the age of 9, 10. Every spring, I had the responsibility of going out into that patch of land on the side of our garage that had been created for my mom's garden. One of the things I had to do every year in the spring of the year, I had to go in and clean up all of the debris. Now, think about that. And I was like, why do we have to clean up the debris? But as I began to clean the debris up and we went through the process, I learned experientially that the debris that was in that garden, because the garden was close to the alley, people driving through the alleys, and you know how people drive through the alleys, sometimes they fly and dust and rocks are flying everywhere. So I had to go through and rake it up. I had to go through and pull out all the debris to prepare the garden to receive the seeds. So we want to kind of talk about that this morning. So I want to bring, let me see, I know, let me bring, who can I bring in? Oh, you got to be on on the Zoom room to bring someone in. Good morning, Courtney. Have you planted anything before? Yeah, let me bring you in. Good morning, Courtney. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Awesome. Have you planted anything before?
I can't say that I've planted anything since grade school.
Wow. What did you plant?
I'm not much of a gardener. I planted, bean sprouts. I grew bean sprouts from a little styrofoam cup. and that's about it. So I'm not really much of a gardener, but I plan to get more into plants.
Awesome. I think all of us should take on the responsibility of having at least one plant in our home that we cultivate. And I'm going to tell you why. Because it is a metaphor for your life. When individuals lose loved ones, oftentimes I tell them to get a particular plant, and I encourage them to cultivate that plant. See if you can keep that plant alive for 1 year. And it's a healthy way of being inside of the grieving process. It's a healthy way for us to realize that the energy that is bringing that plant forward is the same energy that was the life force that was inside of the individual who lived. So I do that for a reason. Now, all of you, many of you may say, like Courtney, that you're not much of a gardener. You are a gardener. You may not have been effective as a gardener as a result. What you have in your life is a result of not being a deliberate, intentional gardener. What is the word for a gardener? I'm going to ask if Cheryl, if you could drop over onto the YouTube, not the YouTube, if you can come on inside of the Zoom room, if possible. I'll look for you to show up because I want to have a conversation with you. And the reason why I've chosen you for this conversation, because I observed over the last few years I've been here, I observed how you deal with your garden. And I think there are some things I want to pull out of that process that all of us today can learn from. So I want to start with, we're talking about being your higher self. And so we all were designed, we all have a unique design, but we all have the same design, that is to be our highest and greatest self, to live the dream, to be the dream. And so this morning, I want to get inside of that conversation, but I don't want to delve into this conversation from the perspective of material manifestation. I'm kind of taken aback with, everybody is talking about manifesting and not realize it's about materialism. But manifesting is an aspect of the life we live. But many people who are drawing to having a higher level of consciousness are tying it to a lower vibration. Now, we're going to learn how to create the things that we want to experience, but we want to also know that it's about cultivating that relationship with source. I and the Father are one. It says that if you abide in the vine, or if you abide in me and I abide in you, you can ask, you can decree. So it's not even a thing of holding an intention. It's not a thing of going through a 7-day process, 7-step process. But when you abide in source, in God, when you align with this highest principle that I and source are one. If you've seen me, you've seen an aspect of source. And if you really are resonating inside that and believe that, then here's what happens. You have the ability to decree a thing and it should be. You come to learn that you are, guess what? Your words are your wands. Your words are seeds, okay? And your mind is the fertile soil. So let's set this up. So good. I'm glad that Cheryl was able to come over. Good morning, Cheryl. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Awesome. Good. Since I have you on the line, am I coming through clear?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Awesome. So here's what, so when do you normally start? How do you know when it's time to start your garden each year?
Well, you watch the calendar and it'll say you begin in the spring, generally around March 24th, 21st, through that week. But it depends on what you're planting because different plants require different times. So
awesome. So you're saying to me that you can't treat every seed or every plant the same?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, because some of them require direct sunlight, some require indirect sunlight, some require different type of fertilizer. So no, there's no just one all do all for all plants.
So you may not know it, but I know how to garden because early in my life, my mom, I was kind of forced to participate in the gardening process. So it even aided on my creative entrepreneurial adventures. Every Saturday I used to get up and I used to go to the local store and I would get my hustle on, carrying groceries to individuals' cars, to their homes. And sometimes in the spring, mom would say, not today. Today you're going to get my garden together. So she had shown me how to do it. First, I watched her do it. Then we did it together. And then she watched me do it. And after about the third year of knowing I knew how to do it, she would just give me instructions. And then I would go with her to buy her seed. Now, there's a couple things I would observe. My mom would know what she wanted to grow in her garden. Okay. I remember she grew tomatoes, she grew turnips, and I think she grew some carrots sometimes. So those are the things I remember her getting. And so she would go to the local store and she would buy the seed packages. And while she's going around the store, I would usually be reading the package. Now, I learned a few things that, like you shared, Cheryl, every seed has directions in order for that thing to grow. Every seed had the potential to be what was on the front of that, but it did not come to fruition unless the sower knew what needed to be done to cultivate it. Like some seeds, you will plant less than an inch into the ground. Some seeds you will go deeper into the ground. And so I learned that there was a maturation process that would take place before the seed would actually break the shell and then begin to work its way to the light and eventually come forth first as I believe the blade, the stalk, and then whatever it is. So I learned some things. So why am I saying that this morning to you all? Because your thoughts, every seed you have, like if you want to create, let's talk about materialism. If you want to create wealth, then there is some things you need to know about that seed. Okay, you're going to not sow it into the earth realm, but it starts with sowing it into your mind. Know this, your mind is a fertile place. So we're talking about being our higher self. So we got to begin to define ourselves, not from the lower self that we have slipped into. When you're born into this earth realm, you have to learn to get back. You have to remember. You have to recall where you came from. Because as you are born into this earth realm, the day you're born, you are as close to source and the power source. But as you evolve, as you grow, you begin to take on the beliefs, you begin to take on the habits, you begin to respond to the environment that you're in. If you're in a friendly environment, you will grow healthier. If you're in a toxic environment, you'll grow, but you probably will have some challenges. And as we mature to a certain age, we realize we begin to define ourselves as to what we've experienced. We define ourselves as to what we are. And so we now have to go back and we have to uproot and we have to replant. We have to begin to do some work in our minds. Now, I want to start this morning in the book of Genesis, chapter 2. And I'm reading from the scriptures, and it's the Institute for Scripture Research. And it says, thus the heavens and the earth was completed in all their array. And on the seventh day, Elohim completed its work, and which it had done, and it rested on the seventh day from all its work which it had made. And Elohim blessed the seventh day and set it apart, because on it rested from all its work which Elohim is creating had made. Now, notice I say it, I don't say God, because that's too limiting. When I say God, automatically you will see it as a he. Automatically you begin to limit what source is. So when we talk about the scriptures and it refers to the highest of our manifestations, that is source, I like to use it. I was taught early in ministry that you don't call the Holy Spirit it, you don't call God it. That was a way of kind of like defaming, but no, I believe it makes room for it to be beyond what I would limit it in by naming it. So he says, these are the births of the heavens and the earth when they were created in the day that Elohim made earth and heaven. Now no shrub of the field was yet on the earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprung up, for Elohim had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no man to till the ground. But a mist went up from the earth and watered the entire surface of the ground. Elohim formed the man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils breath of life. And the man became a living being. And Elohim planted a garden. This is where we're going. Elohim planted a garden in Eden to the east. And there he put the man whom he formed. And out of the ground, Elohim made every tree to grow that is planted and pleasing to the sight and good for food, with the tree of life in the midst of the garden and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it divided and became 4 riverheads. And the name of the first is Pishon. It is the one surrounding the entire land of Havilah, where there is gold. And the gold of the land is good. Now, I'm going to stop right there. So he planted a garden in Eden. Now, many times we read the scriptures and we read them from a literal perspective. I want you to expand your consciousness this morning. I want you to come to the understanding that it's talking about the mind. God planted in the mind of man a garden, and he placed the essence of man in that garden. And he gave man a responsibility to till, to cultivate. And so this morning, I want to challenge you to come to the realization that you have an assignment to cultivate your mind. Because many of us are not familiar with husbandry, we've never planted anything, or it's been eons since we've planted something. We may have to revisit the planting in the physical sense that we can understand planting in the mystical sense. Now, when we plant something, we become God. We see ourselves, we see the full manifestation of our possibility, our potential. When we plant a seed in the ground, it is not God that brings that seed to flourishing. It is you, because you are responsible. Like when I observed Cheryl, and she has beautiful plants all along the front of her house, along the side of her house. And I observed that she cultivates them. She's makes sure that they are getting the sun they need to get. Some of the plants are on the side of the house. Some of the plants are on the back side of the house. She goes through and she's pulling things out of the flower pots that shouldn't be there. She's making sure there's water, they're watering. And even when she comes to visit me, the first thing she does is she sticks her finger in my outside of my door. I have I believe they call it a snake plant, and she sticks her finger down in my plant. I'm like, "What are you doing?" Like she's checking for it to make sure there's water in it. Now I've learned I make sure my plants are watered frequently, so I know how to check the moisture of the water to determine whether or not it's getting enough water. So what I'm learning to do by cultivating these plants that I were given, I'm learning that I must cultivate the seeds that I have sown. Like example, many of you have deliberately, intentionally sown seeds of things you want to see manifest, things you want to see mature, come forward in your life. But you're not doing the things you need to do. What we usually do is we get externally based and we are physically doing things. But before you plant something physically, you have to plant it mentally. Now, our minds are fertile places. And I want you to begin to know that you are formed and fashioned after the image and the likeness of God. You have the super mind, which is source, and then you have your mind, which is an outsourced aspect of source, or I often say your mind is a microcosm of the greater macrocosm, but you are made of source stuff. And so you have to, first of all, begin to over-identify. You have to overstand. So many people have an understanding. Now, what's the difference when you have an understanding? Is you have knowledge, which is above you, and you are understanding of this. You're consciously aware of it. But you want to get to an overstanding where you're on top of that and you have mastery of it. When we talk about spiritual maturity, when we talk about growing, you must be willing to endure the things that come with life. Example, when you plant a seed, that seed does not grow only in the sunshine. That seed grows in the dark of night. That seed grows through the storms. Now, notice this: the more storms that seed encounter early in life makes that seed resilient later in life. It learns to trust in knowing that you have to bend with life. You can't be rigid. Now, many of us are really rigid, and life is breaking us because we're not willing to bend with life. We're not willing to go with the flow. We're not willing to grow with the light. So as I look at my plants, I notice that my plants grow towards the light, and we grow towards the light also. But the issue is there's leaves on the other side of the plant that's not getting full light. And so I make it my business to observe and to turn the plants to make sure that they all are getting the light that they need to get. Now, when you have an experience in your life, you need to look at it from 360 degrees. You need to allow the light of day, or the illumination of source, to help you look at when you're going through something. We are so quick to try to get out of what we're going through, not realizing that we grow through what we go through. Just like that plant, it grows through what it goes through. And so when you're going through something that represents contrast, you have to know this. The word has said, whatever state you're in, you find the ability to be content. Now, to content doesn't mean that you come to the state where you are you just say, I'm going to stay here. But you begin to look at, how did I get here? What did I do? Now, notice that. What did I do? Because you are the gardener who's creating, who's growing the flowers in your seed. I mean, in your plants, or in your garden, or in the pot. You are growing it. God isn't growing it. You are the God that's growing it. And just as you have to take time to give attention to that plant, to that seed, you have to give attention to your thoughts. The word tells us that we must guard our thoughts. We must guard our eye gates, our ear gates. Now, look at this story. In the book of Genesis, chapter 2, we were told that man was placed in the garden. And in the garden, he was told that there was two trees, the tree of knowledge and good and evil, and the tree of knowledge of life. Matter of fact, let me see if I can find that here. So he says, and Elohim said, it's not good for man to be alone. I'm going to make a helper for him. Now, let me back up. Verse 15 says, Elohim took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to guard it. And Elohim commanded the man, saying, eat of every tree of the garden, but do not eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, for in the day that you eat of it, you shall certainly die. Now, that's interesting. He says, the day you eat of this tree, you will certainly die, with the assuredness. Now, we see that they ate of the tree if you go through chapter 3, but it don't appear that they died. But they did die. And I'm going to show you why. You have to understand that man is in a fallen state when he eats of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And most of us spend a vast majority of our life inside the paradigm of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And as a result of that, we find ourselves carnally minded. Now, the word says to be carnally minded is death. Now, when we talk about carnal, we're talking about senses. When you are living according to the sensory realm, it's death. What it means is you're not going to be fruitful. You're not going to be able to live according to your higher self. When you're living inside of the sensory realm, you get hijacked emotionally. You have sad days, you have happy days. And some people may say, is it realistic to think that you can have all happy days? It is realistic to think that you can reform every day to the perspective where it does not dictate feeling sadness or happiness. It is what it is. So let's look here. And Elohim said, it's not good for man to be alone. I'm going to make a helper for him, for it his counterpart. And from the ground, the Elohim formed every beast of the field, every bird of the heaven, brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called each living creature, that was its name. Realize you are the you have dominion over the earth realm. The word says, what is man that thou art mindful of him, that you have created him a little, when I say him, that means male and female, a little lower than the angels. Now, angelic beings are invisible beings. They run on a whole nother frequency. And the only thing that makes us a little lower than the angels or messengers is the fact that we have this earth suit. Okay, so this earth suit allows us to live inside of this ecosystem. It allows us to have dominion over it. Now, so the man gave names to all the livestock and to the birds of heaven and to every beast of the field, but for the man there was not found a helper for him as the counterpart. So I'm gonna keep going down here. In verse 3, and the serpent was more craftier than the beasts of the field, which Elohim had made. Now, let me explain something to you. This serpent, for many of you, we've been taught that it's a snake. And for many people, it's taken on the personification of Satan. But I want to offer to you this morning, from a metaphorical perspective, that this snake is really your spinal cord. So if you look at my fist here, okay, let's see. Do you see that shape there? My fist, my hand would be your brain, and then my arm going down would represent your spinal cord. Your spinal cord is the sensory realm. Your spinal cord feeds your brain. And from the brain, we have this stimuli that we often make decisions from. Now, it's important that you know that, because I want you to know that there's not, just as there's not a God out there, that there's only a God in here. There's no Satan out there. There's only the Sethian or the set thought that's in us. Inside of all of us, it's all one. You can run the higher vibration and then you see the manifestation of all that is good. You can run a lower frequency, lower vibration, then you begin to see the contrasting manifestation of what you would label as bad. So there's a constant ebbing and flowing. There's a constant battle between inside of you with good and evil. The word says, when I would do good, I find myself doing bad. I desire to do right, but I often do wrong. And so part of your spiritual maturing process, or what I would call your initiation, is to learn how to grow through, that you're not reacting, to situations and circumstances. Just because something sad happens does not mean you have to be stuck inside of a sad disposition. And many times people have a depressing situation jump off in their life and they continue to depress. They continue to be sad. Why? Because they continue to run that thing through their mind. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a place for our emotional selves, but you got to be careful that your emotional self, which is your sensory self, does not hijack your higher self. Now, why am I saying this? So the brain and the spinal cord is the metaphor for Satan, or for the lower vibrational acts that we often find ourselves engaged in, our sensory selves. When you want to do right, you find that your sensory selves overrules, and you eat what you know you shouldn't be eating. You drink what you know you shouldn't be drinking. You do the thing that you know you shouldn't be doing. It overrides your intuitive self. Your sensory self connects with your intellectual self. And your intellectual self is usually trying to override what you intuitively know you should do. So you live in two worlds. You live in the world of the lower self, and you live in the world of the higher self. Choose you this day which world you want to occupy. Now, let's go back to the scriptures. I want you to leave with this morning, because it's important for you to get this concept. You understand the beginning of a thing, you'll understand the end of the thing. Now, here, look what happens here. And the serpent said to the woman, you shall surely not die. Now, let me back up. It says, and the serpent was more craftier than any beast of the field, which Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, is it true that Elohim has said, do not eat of every tree of the garden? How many of you have had a contrasting thought when you have been given a intuitive thought or idea, and you begin to question it. That's that serpent mind. That's that that carnal mind. Begin to question the intuitive first mind. Anytime you are second guessing, that means you are going against your first mind, and that comes with maturity. You got to learn how to hear that voice. You got to know the difference between that voice and the voice of your subconscious or your conscious mind. Now, look here. Is it true that Elohim has said, do not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we are to eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, do not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you shall die. And the serpent said to the woman, you shall certainly not die. For Elohim knows that in the day that you eat of your eyes shall be open, and you shall be like Elohim. Now here the serpent was informing them, and I say them because if you read the scriptures, it says after she ate, she gave to her husband who was there with her. So what we understand is when you talk about the male and the female in this story, it's talking about one being. It's talking about the divine feminine and the divine masculine. It's talking about the two sides of the brain, the left side and the right side. One side of the brain is the creative side. One other side is what we call the analytical side. And it's the analytical side that gets us in trouble. The left side of our brain, the society in which we live in, is more left-brained. When you look at the Eurocentric ways, the European is more left-brained. The African at in his original state, unaltered, was more right-brained. Women are more right-brained than left-brained. But because of the society we live in, we find that now women are just as left-brained as men are. So there's a lot of confusion going on. So, I study the mind, I study psychology, I study the soul. And in these things, it's important that you understand your design if you want to operate in your highest potential, your peak potential. So this conversation is ensuing with the serpent, and the serpent is influencing them to eat of the very tree that they shouldn't eat of. They didn't have to eat of it because they were all knowing. The serpent told them, the day you eat of this tree, source, God would know that your eyes and your ears of understanding would be open. Well, they were already open. They were open to what's more important, not the natural eyes, not the sensory realm, but the spiritual essence of who we are. So when they ate of the tree, they slipped from being divine spiritual being, and they slipped into the realm of human beings. Now, you need to know this. Majority of the people you encounter are humans being. They're living inside of the capacity or the limitations that humans have based on the human experience. You are not called to live inside of humanness, but you are called to live as divine spirit beings having a human expression. Okay, so that's important, because when you begin to study the word, to show yourself approved, when you begin to take on a Christ consciousness, you are reconnecting yourself. You are remembering. Now, there's a story that I'm not going to go into in deep detail, but the Assyrian drama, the story of Aset, Haru, and Asar, how Asar was dismembered into pieces by his brother Set. Now, that's what happens to each of us as individuals. We've been dismembered. We've been cut up. We're not operating in the fullness of what we've been designed to do. So you got to reattach. You got to remember. The word remember means to put your members back together. And so one of the goals of Oasis Spiritual Center for Divine Living is to help you to reconnect, to put all the pieces together, that you can operate as the divine man, the divine woman, that you can operate as Asar, Aset, the divine feminine and divine masculine in one space. We got to understand that God is neither male or female. And likewise, we're neither male or female. But when you over-identify with your phenotype, with your physical being, then you slip into being a human being. We have to only do this. Realize this is a earth suit. This is an earthen vessel that allows us to operate inside of this ecosystem. But I am not my body. I am not my skin tone. I am not the things you see. I am not what I have accomplished. I am greater than all of those things. Now, he says here, he says, for Elohim knows that in the day that you eat of it, your eyes shall be open and you shall be like Elohim. You are not like Elohim, you were Elohim. It says he created man in the image and the likeness. Image and likeness. We had the God design. We were created on a smaller level, a replica of source on the larger level. And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant. Now, it's important that you realize that Satan wants to attack, or your Sethian self wants to attack your creative self. What is your creative self? The seed. Every seed is every seed represents an idea. And an idea cultivated has the potentiality of being that thing on the outside. But everything you want to see manifest on the outside, you must learn how to cultivate it on the inside. Now, I noticed that there's a tree in the background of my living room here. You see that tree right there? That's the tree of life, okay? And see, I know that I don't have to eat from any other tree. I know that I'm connected to that tree. I don't have to take anything that's less than. And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eye, and a tree desirable to make one wise. And she took of the fruit and ate, and she also gave to her husband with her. So there it is. He was right there with her. He observed this thing, and he ate. Then the eyes of them both were open, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves. Now notice this. The real purpose of the fig tree is to produce figs, but they changed the purpose of the fig tree into producing leaves. That's important. Remember the story when Jesus was walking from Jericho and he hungered and he saw the leaves and he knew that if there's leaves, there should be fruit. He gets to the tree, there was no fruit, and he cursed it. So we have to really understand the original design and the original intent of things. We changed the original design by our beliefs. We take it from the perfect state and we operate inside of it in an imperfect state. And he says, in the eyes of both of them were open, they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loin coverings for themselves. And they heard the sound of Elohim walking about in the garden. Now notice this. Now you see the sensory realm operating. First they saw that they were naked. Other than that, they were not operating with the lowered, with the physical sight. They were operating with the third eye, from a whole other dimension. They saw, and then they heard. So they were not listening with the two ears, but they were listening with the intuitive ear. And now they heard a sound that they had not heard before, walking in the garden, because now they're separate from, because if you're walking inside of something, you cannot hear that thing because you're one with it. So now they are hearing their footsteps from the outside and observing. They're observing God. They're experiencing God in this dimension. And he says, in the garden of the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Elohim among the trees of the garden. And Elohim called unto Adam and said unto him, where are you? And he said, I have heard your voice in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself. And he said, who made you to know that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree which I commanded you that you should not have? And man said, the woman whom you gave to me. And so we always cast and blame. And we got to learn to take responsibility for what's showing up in our lives. Now I'm going to end right there. So I want to show you something. So when we look in the scriptures, we got to understand that the scriptures gives us an understanding of what has happened. The scriptures gives us an understanding when we don't take it from the literal. See, the Western man took the scriptures and they literalized them instead of staying inside of the scriptures. Are metaphors, they're stories, they're allegories that help you to understand the deeper things. And so we have to understand that our mind is that garden. And you could plant what is showing up in your life today is a direct result of what you planted. Now, many of you started the conversation with, you haven't planted anything. You're not a gardener. You don't operate in husbandry. But I want to say, au contraire, that each one of you is a gardener. Okay? You have to understand that you are the fertile place from which the idea grows or matures into what shows up in your life. So the first thing I want you to begin to do, so if you have a garden, you go through your garden, you look at, is things growing in my garden that I don't want to grow there? So many people will pull the fruit thinking they'll destroy the root. But when you got things growing in your life, you just can't get rid of the fruit. You just can't pull things off the tree. You got to get rid of that tree. You got to know that the fruit is tied to the root. If the root is dead, there will be no fruit. And so because you never destroy the root of that idea, where that thing come from, it keeps manifesting. Or you may get rid of it for a season, but it comes back because the root is still steeped into the fertile place of your mind. So you have to go through your garden and you have to uproot whatever's in your garden that you don't want to experience. All right, you don't want to experience it. It's that simple. Whatever you're experiencing right now, you make a list of the things that you're experiencing that you don't want to experience. And then you take it back to the seed. Where did that come from? When did that seed get planted? It may have been planted by your family of origin and you never saw it planted, but it was planted because you took on behaviors, you took on beliefs that came from your family. That's why you got to examine your beliefs. Your beliefs are seeds. If you believe that man is human and man is a human condition to get sick, guess what's going to show up in your life? Sickness and disease. But I don't buy that. The word says that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. The word says healing is the children's bread. So I live in a system. I live in a world that is impacting my physical self. And so when my physical self begins to experience a less than optimum state, then I go in and I do the work. Sickness and disease is not so much as what's happening outside of you, but it's what's happening inside of you. If you have stress, if you have anxiety, all those things come from the outside to the inside. Something has been planted in your mind. People do it all the time. And so working in this healthcare system that I'm in, I constantly have to guard my mind against the seeds. I show up places, people are masked, people are unmasked, people have conversation about taking a shot. I had a friend recently who took the shot and she caught COVID after taking the shot. And so I don't really buy into this imperfect system. Now, here's what I'm going to say. There's no judgments. If you decided to take the shot, know this is also telling you where your belief is. You believe in the white coat. You believe in the stethoscope. You believe in medical science. That's fine, because you probably will say, well, God gave us medical science. No, man has operated into the fullness of knowledge and understanding. So man is limited inside of science. But there's only so far that natural science can take you. You have to learn that there is a knowingness that does not come about through experience. It's a knowingness that comes from experience. And so I'm challenging you all today to go through the field of your life and to look at what is showing up, because I want you to be your higher self, not your lower self. Most of us are creating from our lower self. We're creating from that state of desire that comes from the place of lack or not experiencing what we want to experience. And we're basing that on the sensory realm, because the reality is everything you want, you already have. You have to know how to get it from the field, from the unseen realm to the seen realm. You have to know how to cultivate that thing in your mind and then bring that thing forward into the life experience. So this morning, we're talking about being your higher self. And your higher self is this, not your ego self, not your female or your male self. And I'm calling these conversations, everybody is a guru today. Everybody is a life coach. Everybody is preaching. Everybody is teaching. But where are the signs and wonders? You need to begin to ask those individuals who are espousing these things, how is it working for you? No, get beyond just buying things based on packaging. Get beyond in being pulled in the conversation because it's the shiny things. The shiny things are the distracting things. You got to get into a place. The word says, though you have 10,000 instructors, you have not many fathers. The father is the one. See, I'm a father. I know that what it means to be a father. It's about cultivating. It's about putting your hands on. It's about formulating that thing or coming alongside of my children, letting them at this point in their lives have the experience they need to have. But if they really want to maximize their relationship with me, then they begin to have conversations with me about how I made it, how I'm making it. Because many times people are looking at the external and are trying to backdoor engineer, oh, he made it this way. No, I didn't make it this way. I made it that way. And I end up doing it that way, and it looks like this way. What I mean by that is first it starts with an intuitive urge, an intuitive hunch. It's an intuitive instruction. And so the word says, many are the plans of man. You got plans on how you can do it, how you want to do it. But the end thereof is destruction. You keep having these failing experiences because you're not operating from the divine mind. You're not operating as source. You're not operating as a microcosm of the greater macrocosm. So you got to get to that. You got to get to the realization that this one absolute truth, I and the Father are one. The absolute truth that there's a power greater than you that not only resides around you, but that power resides in you. And guess what? You can use it. But you can't be double-minded. You can't live inside of the carnal mind, the sensory mind, and also want to live inside of the God mind or the source mind. You have to make a decision. You're going to live according to the superconscious or you're going to live according to the subconscious. Now, the subconscious has been imposed by your experiences. The subconscious has been imposed on by what you believe. And so you got to it says, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, because your mind is either held hostage to the subconscious or is held hostage or is in alignment with the superconscious. And we want to disconnect from the cares of this world. We want to disconnect from the subconscious mind that is steeped inside of beliefs, steeped inside of experiences that keep us from operating by God's design. Now, I said a lot this morning, because I see too many people struggling with they get this and they want that. Life is not about the acquisition of things. Life is about manifesting, having dominion, showing up as God in the earth, and all those other things come with it. Awesome. Good. Let me see if there's any questions this morning as I prepare to wrap up. Go down here through my feed here. Okay, I don't see no comments on the YouTube. I'm looking here in the, I got some comments here. I planted a garden when I was in home. Okay, that was that. So everything manifests to begin with a thought. That's right. Everything, and the thought is the imagination. Come on, we got to learn how to play with our imagination. Every seed is inside of the imaginative faculty. We're going to begin to look at that. We're going to unpack that. It's my earnest prayer that you all move away from this superficial, this surface engagement, and that you become what you were designed to be, that you have mastery of this thing called life. Wow. So that's all I have this morning. If this has been a blessing to you, I encourage you to go over to the website, www.oasisspiritualcenter.com, and poke around, see what's happening out there, see what we believe. Also, consider sowing a seed. The word says the sower sows a seed. Come on now. And not only money, but in your own life. You are the sower. You got to sow the right seed in your mind. The problem is you have all these seeds, but you're not deliberately and intentionally sowing them in the mind. Sow them in the mind. Likewise, the sower sows a seed. Whatever seed it sows is the harvest it reaps. So if you want wealth, you got to sow wealthy things. If you want money, you have to sow money to get money. Come on, money does not fall from heaven, but when you sow into the lives of those who are sowing into you, it comes back to you. The word says, give and it shall be given to you. Pressed down, shaken together, that is condensed. Shall I open up the windows and pour you out a blessing that you shall not have room enough to receive? So see, here's the thing. Many of us have not made space to have that experience, to have room more. You don't have room for that. So when you have overflow, when you have abundance, now you have the ability to be more of a blessing. Because as long as you don't have enough for your cup to run over, you're really not in a position to help nobody else. So it's when you allow your cup to run over that you can flow into other people's lives. Now, if you're giving and your cup isn't full, then the word of God tells us this: the man who does not take care of the woman or the man does not take care of their own house, you're the house, is worse than an imbecile. So you got to take care of your house. Once you take care of your house, then you can help you can be part of other people's lives. You got to become selfish. You got to know this, that you take care of yourself, then you can take care of others. You can be part of that process. But most of us are not in the place right now where we should be taking care of other people. Take care of yourself. Cultivate your brain, your mind. No, your brain and your mind is two different things. Your brain is part of the sensory realm. And that's the problem. Religion is steeped inside of the sensory realm. It's steeped inside of intellect. It's steeped inside of analytical thoughts. But you cannot know God from an analytical place. To really know God is an experience. It comes from the right side of living, not the left side of living. So that's all I have this morning. I pray something was said that was uplifting and encouraging. This is going to go up on the YouTube channel shortly. I want to close with this. Here, let me see here. If you got a question, go ahead and type it in. And I'm going to close with this song that we started with this morning. And the song was entitled, "You Are the Source." Listen to these words. One second here. There you go. Tell me if the volume is correct. If somebody's on the Zoom room, let me know if that volume is coming through correct. You are the source of my life. I am who I am today because you're by my side. You comfort me and show me that I can make it through the night. Your love for me means everything to me. That's why I live, that's why I sing, that's why I can be me. You lift me up when I'm down, you come through for me. Wanna tell everybody that you're all that I ever need. I've got to testify, you've been good to me. You never left my side, always been there for me. You are the source of my life, and with all I do, I owe my everything to you. Can never go through one day without your love to guide me, without you here beside me. You are the source of my life, and with all I do, I owe my everything to you. I owe you everything. Can never go through one day without your love to guide me, without you here beside me. Some friends may come and friends may go. You always let me know that I'm never all alone. Through the storm, through the rain, through my darkest days, you said I trust in you, lean on you. You
ease my troubled mind. If I could tell you what you mean to me and what you've done for me, say you are the air I breathe. I've gotta testify, you've been good to me. You never left my side, always been there for me. You are the source of my life. I owe my everything. I owe everything. Go through one day without your love to guide me, without you here beside me. You are the source of my life. Source of my life. I owe my everything to you. I could never go through one day without your love to guide me, without you here beside me. I thank you, Lord, for thinking of me, to see my road and to change my life story. Even though I can't see it's a power, just give me the courage to do all that you need. Follow me and to lead me, Lord. All the strength to carry on. I owe you my all. Oh, yes, I do. For you are the source of my life. I owe my everything. I can never go through one day. Without you here beside me. You are the source of my life. All I do, I owe my everything to you. Oh, yeah.
All right, that's Antoine, Antwuan Stanley, entitled You Are the Source. I encourage you to listen to that. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow morning for Serendipity Sunday. Peace.